Today on Dreamland, we have two powerful, extraordinary, and totally unique stories. You will not hear this anywhere else on planet Earth, but the information is vitally important to your life, to understanding who you are and who we are, and what is really happening to us that we are not being told. That is the theme of this week's show, what we are not being told. And we are not being told the truth, or the whole truth at least, about that asteroid flyby that took place a couple of weeks ago when an asteroid passed between the Earth and the Moon. Linda Moulton Howe has a report about this and the difficulty that is being experienced getting crucial information that we know exists about that asteroid. Why can't they tell us? And Linda asks that question of one of the scientists who is actually working on it. You can draw your own conclusions after the report as to why we are not being given the information that seems so critical to understanding what actually happened. Then, you remember back in May, maybe you don't, the Out There section on Unknown Country published a brief story about an apparent missile launch in Arizona, about 40 miles east of Phoenix. There was no question about the fact that something was launched, and not only was it launched, as it reached into the upper atmosphere, it seems to have been interacted with something else. Well, we've been following up on this because we have wondered what went on, and we followed up with the witness who posted the video on YouTube, and it turns out he's got an awful lot to say about this. He does various kinds of research in the area. He's been back a number of times, and it is absolutely incredible what he has found. And once again, you will not hear this anywhere else in the world, which gets me to a suggestion. If you are a subscriber, why don't you clue your friends into the importance of unknowncountry.com and Dreamland? If you aren't a subscriber, and I'm now talking to 90+% of my listeners, why not do it? We need you very badly right now. We can't do this without you, and I'm not willing to take Dreamland into a subscriber-only mode. I'm not willing to do that. It's got to get out to many, many people, and a lot of people can't afford it, and I understand that. These are hard times, but a lot of people can afford $3.95 a month. So get with the program and help this thing keep going. If you look at Unknown Country, you realize how much it costs. It costs a lot to do this, and this is literally a place where you get information that is simply not available elsewhere. It's extremely valuable information. Very, very, very valuable, because we are living in the middle of a secret world, a world that we are not being told about. We do not know the reality of the world we live in. I know it. Linda Moulton Howe knows it. Alex Hearn, who we'll hear later talking about the missile, knows it. You all know it. But we can chip away if we're willing. The media in general is absolutely not willing. Here we are willing, and that's why you need to make sure we can keep going. If we go away, a terrible silence is going to fall in your life. Think about that. And for subscribers, this week I'm going to be reading Chapter 4 of Solving the Communion Enigma, about the amazing events that took place as Ann and I left upstate New York for the last time, leaving the cabin behind us forever. A sad but also incredibly amazing and inspiring story. And also, if you are a subscriber, get set for something special. 50 free copies of Solving the Communion Enigma will be available for subscribers, and we'll let you know in the subscriber bulletin just when they are available. The 25 copies of my teen thriller that were available free for subscribers last week went in just a few minutes, so get set to pull the trigger. We'll let you know in the subscriber bulletin when you can. It will be sometime in late December or early January, but believe me, If you open your copy of the subscriber bulletin when you first get it, you'll be among the first to know. So good luck with that.
Dreamland listeners, now you can listen to or download Dreamland from the site or from iTunes. On iTunes, search podcasts for Dreamland. On your smartphone, download the Wonder Radio app and search stations for Dreamland.
Well, today, Dreamlanders, Linda Moulton Howe is back with us with a remarkable and very, very strange report about that asteroid that passed between the Earth and the Moon on November the 8th, the closest approach of an asteroid in decades. And something happened, something that needs to be carefully examined and isn't being, or if it is being, it is absolutely not being released to the public. Linda Moulton Howe is the Emmy Award-winning editor of EarthFiles.com. Don't miss a single day of EarthFiles.com. Here she is from Albuquerque, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thank you, Whitley. My news website, EarthFiles.com, has received many viewer inquiries asking, where are the new asteroid YU55 radar images taken by Arecibo and the Goldstone Deep Space Network on November 8, 2011? That's when the 1,300-foot-wide space rock passed between the Earth and Moon. The asteroid's closest approach to Earth was within 201,700 miles at 3:28 p.m. Pacific on November 8th. 2 days later, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, issued a press release that quoted JPL physicist, planetary scientist, and asteroid specialist Lance Benner, Ph.D., as saying, quote, "The radar animation reveals a number of puzzling structures on the surface that we don't yet understand. To date, we've seen less than one-half of the surface, so we expect more surprises," close quote. Since that November 10th press release, I look forward to seeing new radar images from the asteroid's closest approach to Earth on November 8th. But a month has passed, and still no new images. So I called Dr. Benner at JPL to ask when the closest radar images will be released. He told me, quote, "We were sampling data at 40 million times a second, and we ended up with close to 40 terabytes of data. So we have lots of work to do," close quote. But I wanted to know more about the puzzling structures he referenced, and he agreed to do an interview. Then when I asked him several times about when JPL would release the November 8th to 10th new radar images, his nervous evasion made me wonder if there is something in the puzzling structures that is now considered a national security issue. Further, I realized that radar images that are in the gray color scale can be manipulated and altered even more easily than color images, and the only people who would ever know might perhaps be some government officials and certainly the scientists themselves who received and analyzed the raw data. But why would there be any nervousness about the finest resolution radar images ever taken of an asteroid from Earth, as Dr. Benner explained, about the improved Goldstone technologies? Maybe the simple answer is nothing more than an overwhelming amount of data to be analyzed. But then there are those puzzling features, including a 100-foot-high, sharp, pointy hill that Dr. Benner described for me from the radar images he now has on his own computer, but they have not been released to the public and the media. Here now is Dr. Lance Benner, planetary scientist and asteroid specialist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California.
We'll join Dr. Lance Benner in just a moment after these messages. Subscribers, my new teen thriller, Melody Burning, is in bookstores and online now. You can look at a video about it on YouTube. Just search on Whitley Strieber. Do consider getting a copy for the teenager in your life or for yourself, online or at any bookstore. And now let's listen to Dr. Lance Benner at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
This particular asteroid, YU55, has a bulge or a ridge near its equator. But we didn't expect to see it in something that's rotating with a rotation period of about 16 hours. Most objects that have that kind of feature are much more rapidly rotating, between 2 and 4 hours. So not something we would have expected. The other asteroids where we've seen this kind of feature, the best explanation that we currently have is that an object was spinning rapidly, and that in combination with a very porous rubble pile internal structure enabled material to move outward and produce that kind of structure.
What would be an example of another asteroid that shows an equatorial ridge?
The asteroid 1999 KW4, based on some work that we published in the journal Science in 2006. And it has a really pronounced bulge at its equator. That was really the first pronounced example of this. It's an asteroid that rotates with a period of slightly less than 3 hours. It's about 1 mile across, 1.5 kilometers in diameter. Really pronounced bulge at its equator. And YU55, there's a distinct signature of it in the radar images that we got. In addition to some images that came out after the press release, we see some other small-scale topography that I don't recall ever seeing on any of our asteroid images before. There's a rather sharp, pointy little, might be a hill, it's not entirely clear, on the top of the images that we obtained on November 10th. We don't really understand yet what those are, or what that is. There's just one in particular that sticks up. Just looking at it, it appears to be somewhere in the realm of 20 to 30 meters above the surrounding topography. But it's a bit of a puzzle. It could simply be a large block on the surface, or maybe there's something else. I'm not sure what that is. That's one example of some of the things that we've seen that we don't really understand.
So far, have you gotten any clear radar images of this 20 to 30 meter object that extends above the surface?
Well, it appears in a number of images on November 10th. Just looking at the images, it's something that pokes up above the surroundings. And we can clearly see that it's higher topographically than the areas adjacent to it, but we don't really know in detail what it is. My suspicion is that when we do the full three-dimensional shape reconstruction is that it'll simply be a bump on the surface that pokes up. As to why there would be such a feature, that's not entirely clear. There it is.
Do you have any radar image of this that I can use?
Well, we haven't released it yet. At this point, I'm not sure we're really going to do any more press releases. We've done quite a few already.
But I haven't seen any new images since your November 7th press releases.
Well, we've released. Let's see. There was that first image on November 7th, and then there were two different animations. One that consisted of 6 individual frames on November 7th. There was a longer one, I think, that had more than 20 frames. That was also from November 7th. That showed more rotation than the earlier one did.
I saw those, but I thought they were all older images before the closest passage occurred on November 8th.
Well, we haven't released any of the images. We've actually been processing the data. We got a lot of data, taking quite a while to process.
When do you think you will be able to release the radar images from YU55's closest approach to Earth?
Well, normally the way we do this is not in the form of a press release. It's normally in the form of putting together a scientific paper for a scientific journal. In this particular instance, I think there's a pretty good chance that we will provide another animation. At Goldstone, we have a new imaging system which has enabled us to improve the level of detail that we can see by a factor of 5. And so this is the first asteroid where we've been able to take full advantage of that new capability and get very highly detailed images. By very highly detailed, what I mean is the resolution of these images is 4 meters per pixel. These are the finest resolution radar images ever obtained for an asteroid in this kind of size category because we have this new imaging capability at Goldstone. So again, the resolution is 4 meters, which is about 12 or 13 feet. Very, very fine resolution. That's actually finer than the resolution of some of the NASA spacecraft that have flown by comets in recent years. So that's something we've never been able to do before. But we do image a number of asteroids throughout the course of the year, combined at both Goldstone and Arecibo.
Right, but it was because this came so close between the Earth and the Moon, everybody would like to see what it looks like, and I'm just curious, when would I be able to have an image or images that can show what this looks like and what that 30-meter knob looks like and so forth?
Well, as I said, we're probably going to do another release with another animation. I don't know the specific date for that. I really appreciate your interest in it. It's wonderful to see that there is this much interest.
Yes, there really is. And I'm curious, if you do another NASA JPL animation, will you have November 8th, 9th, and 10th radar images in it?
We haven't really decided, which day we're going to do next. As I said, it's been taking quite a bit of effort to process all the data. We're sampling data 40 million times a second.
A second.
40 million times a second, and we ended up with close to 40 terabytes of data.
Wow.
Okay, that's a lot of data, and even with modern computers, it takes a while to process that.
Do you have any kind of a really clear radar image?
Well, yes, of course. However, the formal way that the JPL asks us to release through our media relations office, and so we coordinate everything with them and make sure that we're following appropriate protocols and all that sort of thing. And so that's what we've done with the images that have come out and the animations that have come out so far. And so we're going to obviously follow NASA protocols for anything else that we would put out as well.
Well, I'm looking at the photograph that was released from November 7th, 2011. This was a photograph before the November 8th closest pass of YU55 between the Moon and the Earth. It looks sort of bulbous and what looks like a depression further toward the middle. There is also some white material that seems to cross where the depression is. I wondered how much more clear are your newest radar images now?
The thing that you asked about possibly being a depression, it's not entirely clear if that is. It might well be. It's certainly a dark feature as seen in the radar. There are a couple of possible explanations for it. It could be a topographic depression. It could simply be a slight change in the slope of the local surface. And to really understand what's going on there, we need to do the full three-dimensional shape reconstruction.
Dr. Benner?
Yes.
Why is it that YU55 continues to come so close in between the Earth and the Moon and Venus and this part of the solar system?
Well, its orbit around the sun is such that it just happens to come by the Earth it came by this year. It'll come by the Earth again in the 2040s. It'll go by Venus very closely in 2029, then the Earth again in 2075. It has somehow gotten into this kind of orbit around the sun that enables it to do this. When it encounters one of these planets, it gets a gravitational nudge in the process that undoubtedly plays some role in all of this. But how it got into this configuration, we don't know.
I wondered if you have a perspective from your years of studying asteroids about this question. Could an asteroid in the half-mile diameter range end up suddenly emerging in the solar system in a way that could impact the Earth? I'm thinking of the Chicxulub crater event 65 million years ago. Is that possible in this day and age for any asteroid large enough to do damage to surprise you in the asteroid science community?
Is it possible? It probably still is. I can't give you a formal probability, what the chances are of that sort of thing. If that were to happen, it would likely be a scenario similar to what happened with YU55 just recently. YU55 was discovered 6 years ago, so we knew it was coming. But there is certainly a blind spot in the direction of the sun. So if there's something from the direction of the sun, right now we won't see it until it's gone by. Search efforts that are underway using optical telescopes don't look very close to the sun because they can't in order to protect their equipment. So there's a very small chance that something this size could approach from that distance. We think that there are still at least several thousand objects in a similar size range to 2005 YU55, 400 meters, about the size of the Empire State Building. We think that there's still several thousand of those yet to be discovered. The search efforts are finding a lot of them, and they're finding them pretty efficiently. But it will take many years at the current rate of discovery to sweep up all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, there's a probability. I don't know what it is. I suspect it's actually fairly small. The chance of something hitting us of that size range is very remote. The timescales over which that happens are really quite long. I don't remember the precise number, but I think it's on the order of hundreds of thousands of years on average between impacts and something that big. It's much more likely that something the size of a house or a bus would hit the atmosphere. Like that small object that plunged into the atmosphere over North Africa in the fall of 2008. That's the kind of thing that's much more likely. An object that might be a few meters or maybe 10 meters across. Things like that hit much, much more frequently. Something this big, although they do hit occasionally, the interval over which they do is quite long, and it's very, very likely that we will find all of them before they happen to find us.
So when will the November 8, 2011 radar images be seen beyond NASA JPL? Dr. Benner thinks that the Jet Propulsion Lab will release another video animation, but strangely, he does not know if it will contain any of the November 8th to 10th, 2011 high-resolution Goldstone radar images. As he also said, he and his colleagues might be presenting their YU55 images and data in upcoming journals and at upcoming conferences in 2012. The first possible place that we might hear more is the January 8th to 12th, 2012 American Astronomical Society meeting in Austin, Texas, followed in March the 19th through the 23rd at the Lunar and Planetary Science Conference in Houston, and then May 16th to 20th, there is an Asteroids, Comets, and Meteors Conference in Niigata, Japan. You can Google news about YU55 asteroid, and as of December 5th, 2011, the last headline was November 11th, quote, NASA releases updated radar movie of asteroid 2005 YU55, close quote. But now we know from Dr. Benner, those are 20 frames taken by Goldstone on November 7th, the day before its closest approach when the asteroid was 860,000 miles from Earth. By November 8th, the next day, YU55 was 4 times closer to Earth, and those are the radar images from Goldstone and Arecibo that I've been waiting to see. I also wonder how those 20 frames from November 7th were assembled for release to the public and media so soon after, but another 20 frames from the next day of puzzling features has not yet been produced. Whitley, what is your perception of this?
Linda, I'm just sitting here with my mouth open. The guy, I don't want to be impolite to him, but he did not answer your questions. Linda, what could it be? You mentioned a national in the intro. You mentioned the possibility of a national security issue, and I have to ask the question: what sort of a national security issue could silence them? Because the man, I could hear the strain in his voice. I think we all could.
Right.
What could it be?
Well, what came to my mind after I did the interview and was so aware of how nervous he was at all those questions that I kept asking, I was trying to be polite, but I was trying to persist. When will we see November 8th through 10th? And then it occurred to me, what if YU55, this asteroid that has an orbit that comes around close enough that we can get some clear images of the surface, what if there is terraforming on it? Terraforming simply means something that might be artificial structure, and I realize when I say artificial structure, I am implying some other intelligence might have interacted with that asteroid at some point in the past.
Unless we interacted with it at some point in the distant past.
Well, whatever. If we are now at a point in the 21st century where we're getting closer and closer lookups or close-up looks at asteroids and comets and other planets and moons in our solar system, and we have a government policy, a denial of anything about non-humans or non-human intelligence in the universe that has been strictly enforced since President Harry Truman, as I've been told, signed an executive order in 1947 making it a crime, imprisonment, and all kinds of penalties having to do with the issue of the crashed technologies in New Mexico and other places that they did not want their perceived enemies to know anything about, which at the time would have been the Soviet Union and Germany and so forth after World War II.
Right.
And that in the last 60 years, This policy of denial in the interest of national security has had a firm steel lid put on any information that is factual about what you and I and a lot of people have been exposed to, and that is interaction with this planet. Now, in the past, and I assume for the foreseeable future, by other intelligences that are quite advanced and are not Homo sapien. And if the government of the United States and England and other national leaders have decided that they want to revise history, they want to construct and keep in place the false history that we are alone in the universe to some incredibly impossible to understand point in a future when the earth would keep living with this falseness, and that there would be all of these strict policies to hurt people who go beyond the lies and try to report the truth, then maybe what this nervousness is about is that any time there is any unusual feature or structure on anything that Goldstone or Arecibo or Hubble, and Hubble's optical, the other two are radar, that they might see on another planetary body must be shown to some insider who is running roughshod over this issue of are we alone in the universe, and when do the people who live on this planet, when are they told the truth about facts that our government and the English government, British government at least, have known since World War II? They knew then. They were watching and dealing with technologies in the skies that were completely beyond anything that any human industry was doing in the early 1940s. Today, we are at almost 2012. Our sophistication with radar and with other technologies and our ability to manipulate images digitally is so sophisticated that it raises for me a bottom line question going forward from now into the foreseeable future. How will we ever know that any image or images released to this planet from any space, corporation, company, or government is actually the images that the scientists received?
Well, I don't think we will, and this takes me back to the Mars face. And to Mark Carlotto, Dr. Carlotto, who we discussed on the telephone the other day, you and I. And he told you and he told me after the close-up of the face was released by NASA that, and here this man is a leading professional in the field, he said that it had been altered.
That's right.
And he said it had been altered using photographic techniques.
And in fact, Whitley, the very morning that this was released in the New York Times and all of the credible newspapers and media around the entire planet, I called up Dr. Carlotto and said, this looks to me like somebody took a pencil eraser to the original Cydonia image that you showed me in your office, which I had seen in very clear, high resolution in his office, which is where they separate tanks from trees for the Department of Defense. And he then said, yes, you are right. This image that has been released and is on one of the front pages of the New York Times, it has been manipulated. This is an erasure. They want the subject to go away.
They want the subject to go away. Of course they do. And, to me, it always gets back to the problem. The central problem. It's why the White House just bald-faced lied about those petitions, saying they had no evidence whatsoever.
Right.
It gets back to the fact that there is only one step from admission of the slightest presence of intelligent life anywhere else in the universe to the question of what is happening to people here. Because so many people have had direct encounters and direct involvement, and all of these encounters say the same thing. Government is fundamentally failing in its most basic requirement to protect its citizens.
And to tell the truth.
And this is why they will absolutely never, ever, ever admit anything. If this comes out, it's going to come out either by accident or because who or whatever is here wants it to come out. The government will never help us. The government has failed in its most basic responsibility, and it knows it, and that's its real secret.
I think you're absolutely right.
Wow. I'm all steamed up.
Well, so am I, because of all of the agencies that uses taxpayer dollars, that is still going out into frontiers and getting some of the most amazing close-up images of comets and asteroids, other planets and moons. Is there any other basic right that the human family here, especially Americans paying for this, should have, is to see exactly what the scientists and our own so-called representative government knows about?
Exactly. It is a most basic and most fundamental right. Linda Moulton Howe, thank you very much for, as always, a terrifically provocative report. And Linda Moulton Howe, we try to have her with us at least once a month. Linda Moulton Howe will be back with us, I'm sure, in December or early January.
Thank you.
On May the 26th, 2011, Alexander Hearn saw something very unusual on a road in Arizona. It appeared to be a rocket launch taking place, a very substantial one, not an amateur rocket, but a real missile launch taking place over a populated area in Arizona. He managed to get a video while the rocket was still ascending and posted it on YouTube. It was immediately picked up by Unknown Countries Out There editor and posted on Unknown Countries Out There section. Now we're going to talk to Alexander Hearn about what he has found out since, because this story is ongoing. But first, let's listen to his words at the beginning of the launch. If you want to watch the video, the simplest way to do it is to Google Missile Launch Arizona. That'll take you right to the Out There story. Why won't it take you to any other news reports? Well, that's a good question. We're going to ask Alexander that question too. Here he is last May as he saw from the roadside the rocket ascending.
Mitch and I saw what we thought was a dust devil. Looks like it turned out to be a rocket launch out of the middle of the desert just south of the Superstition. We're going to go up into the sun here. Now pan over, and it continued up and off, and there it goes.
Well, Alex, welcome to Dreamland.
Hi, Whitley. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good. Listen, I was pretty interested when I saw the email that you sent me a couple of days ago about ongoing activity in the area where the missile launch took place, because I've had that looked at by professionals at this point, and there's no question this was not only a launch, it was a launch of a substantial device. This was not a home hobbyist's rocket at all. This was something that at least went up into near space. And it could even have been launching something into orbit. There's no way to tell for sure, but this was not a homemade rocket, so that's kind of established at this point. Now, tell us, before we go on, what exactly you saw on that day. We know from listening to the audio that you first thought it was a dust devil. Then you got out of the car at some point. What happened then?
We were driving when I first noticed it, and the reason I was looking over there is on the way out, we had gone to the mountain range on the other side of the Superstition Mountains called the Anchayas. It's a little north of there, but that's the easy way to explain it. And we were coming back, but on the way there, we had seen a lot of activity in the desert there. So trucks going in and out, big trucks, which are still going on to this day, which is what you were speaking about. So the trucks were putting up so much dust that you couldn't tell if it was trucks or small dust devils on the way out there. So we're coming back, and we're probably in what's called Gonzales Pass, and it's an area just northwest of where I was when I was filming, and we saw what looked like a dust devil and this one was much higher, just a plume of dust going up in the sky off in the distance. And, a few seconds went by, you come out of Gonzales Pass, and you're on the same highway, but it takes a bend to the north west. And, excuse me, so I would have been, when I first saw it, northeast of the area we were filming.
Right.
Forgive me. But so the road takes a bend to the northwest and is going pretty much directly northwest when we stopped and saw it. But at this point, we realized that it was some kind of launch because instead of a dust devil, just a dust devil, you had this plume of dirt, and then above that, a plume of white, a
contrail, yeah, a single contrail, or a single exhaust trail.
Exactly, but it was huge. It was.
This was a substantial device. This was.
Yeah, it didn't look like Robert Goddard playing games.
No, it was the size. As one of the experts I had looked at it said, this was something about the size of a Minuteman missile. In other words, it was a substantial device.
That's a good way to describe it, and it did seem to have, we could see the vehicle, although distortion and stuff, I have no idea how much that plays on, the heat.
You can't see the vehicle on YouTube at all. What did it look like?
It looked like some kind of huge rocket with swept wings.
With wings, swept wings.
Smaller swept wings, and it looked like a really large vehicle. I don't know if we was, the person I was with, and I didn't tell him I was coming on today, so I won't give his name yet. But it's
don't give his name.
He's a former colonel in the Air Force, and he worked at Cheyenne Mountain. So right away he knew it was a launch. And he said when he saw the wings, it looked like that usually means that it's going to come back into the atmosphere.
Right.
So I don't know if we saw, some kind of new ICBM, or if we saw a new space vehicle, and then the UFO / interaction with another vehicle is pretty strange too.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because as we watch the video, as it comes to the end, something moves toward this object very rapidly and seems to intersect with it.
It does. So, and I'm, not much more than the average person on this. I've done a lot of research since, but I couldn't tell if the missile was trying to interact with that, if they were shooting something down, or if that was observing the missile or trying to shoot at the missile.
It's hard to know whether the missile was shooting it down or it was shooting the missile down, but they surely intersect.
It does appear that they intersect.
What did your friend think about that?
Well, his first thought on the whole deal was, we're going to war. And then when
he thought we were going to war, that there was a missile, there was a war going on. Yeah.
Exactly. Whether, that'd be with space people or, another country or whatever, and I'm, trying to be generic.
Well, from the previous January, there were two other incidents that took place. One very famous one off the coast of California that was immediately debunked as the contrail of an incoming flight from Japan, that later turned out not to be the case, and it was indeed a missile trail. And then one that was less well known that appeared off of the coast of in the Gulf of Mexico a few days later, and at the same time that the missile appeared off the California coast, it was reported that a Chinese submarine had been spotted off the California coast. And so there was speculation, denied by the government, of course, that the Chinese had fired a warning shot to let us know just how close they could come. So I wonder if there's any connection. I mean, you and I can't tell, but this is part and parcel of something else, I think.
Yeah, one of the big things going on that day, and I only say this because it was going on that day, this is not a location that normally would have activity of this type, but who knows what they have now. One of the things going on that day, it was approximately, I don't remember the exact date of the bin Laden capture and killing, but it was a few days past that. It was one of the days they had said they got bin Laden's computer and had a location on al-Zawahiri, and who was at the time the number 2 man, now newly appointed, probably figured to be the number 1 man in Al-Qaeda now. And they were taking a few shots at either his, location where he is, or locations where he's known to go, or where he keeps data. And that was going on that day. It was announced that day that, they had basically done some surgical strikes.
Right.
But
what a missile launch in Arizona would have to do with that, especially because this is not an unpopulated area this thing went over.
That's why the one thing that I think tells us that it had to be something real.
Real in the sense of it being not
a test.
Not a test, exactly.
Yeah, unless it was some kind of test where they have a static location and have to, test from that facility. But if it's a mobile launcher, the tests are done somewhere else. It does not have to be tested from its location. If it's a static location, if the location doesn't move, then I guess at one point or another they would have to test their firing systems.
Well, yeah, but now what areas, populated areas, would this have been flying over?
This would be directly to if you're familiar with the Phoenix East Valley area, so you have Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa, Apache Junction, and then you have, scattered communities in the desert, Gold Canyon, Queen Valley. I'm probably leaving a few out. And those are in the direction that would be to our right on the highway, to our north side. The highway travels basically at that point east and west, except for the one range where we stopped. It does go around a mountain coming out of Gonzales Pass, and then it bends to the northwest.
What is exactly the number of this highway so people can orient themselves on a map?
It's US 60. So it basically travels through Arizona and New Mexico.
Right.
It goes up
and
through
it's
the
US
Apache
60.
Nation.
How many miles from Phoenix?
I don't travel all the way to Phoenix, so I could be off a few, but say 40.
40 miles from Phoenix.
Yeah, 40,
in other
45.
words, right in the middle, not only of a highly populated area, but also the scene of the Phoenix Lights.
Yes.
And an area which is known for having a high level of UFO activity, and indeed, this thing goes up, and then there's suddenly an interaction with an unknown object, and you do have to wonder what this is all about, don't you? I mean, I do.
Yeah, the neat thing about this whole weekend for us, I do some crypto investigations, and I won't go into that, but we were in the mountains for a quick shoot with a local news channel, the local Fox channel, on the crypto stuff that we do. And while we were up there, we saw another researcher, and that person told us earlier in the summer of a silver disc that she watched for about 20 minutes, bouncing from mountain peak to mountain peak and slowly observing the mountain. And, we just took it to be, interesting, but we weren't thinking really anything about it. Now, because that researcher was up there, we decided to head back a day early, and we drove back the morning of the filming of the video, and we were coming through the mountains, approaching Superior, Arizona, which is also on the US 60, and facing the Superstition Mountains, and we saw a silver disc, this type object, go from one peak to another. And we both turned to each other and said, "Did you see that?" And, you know, that's the last we saw of it. We drove through Superior. We drove through Gonzales Pass, and that's when we saw the Dust Devil. And then we pulled over. We saw, you know, we noticed it was a launch, so we pulled over as soon as possible. We started filming. During the filming, with the naked eye, you couldn't see that interaction. But what we later saw on the video and the enhanced version, that object looks very similar to what we saw pass between the peaks, and probably similar to what the report that person gave us back in that she had seen in the previous season.
Which is just
Which
is just extraordinary. Yeah. Because it looks like we're at war on some level, and somebody's shooting away. I have to ask you this. You've been up there, I'm sure, since. What's going on up there now?
Well, immediately afterwards, I went back the next day, and there was a fire, a burn area, just behind where we were filming, within about 2.5 miles. And it went on for about 3.5 miles until, if anybody's familiar with the area, there's an arboretum right before you come into the town of Superior. So basically from the Gonzales Pass area that I've spoke of to the edge of that arboretum, it actually burnt around the arboretum, but didn't damage any of the arboretum that I know of. But there was a burn area. Now, what that was from, I don't know, but it was pretty kind of coincidental, if you ask me. And also that same night and following day, it was reported that there was basically one of the first forest fires of the season. That would have been early May in the Apache reservation somewhere near White River, which would have also been kind of in the direction of this missile. This missile looks like it was traveling directly east. We were traveling northwest at the time. So it would put it right over this Gonzales Pass area, right over the southern end of the White Mountain Apache Nation, and then on towards White Sands, the upper middle of the range. And, you know, who knows from there where. And if it turns or if it stayed in one vector, that's where it would go. If it could turn or maneuver, then there'd be some different things going on.
And what if have you seen up there since?
Well, I've gone back a few times, and we've seen just the continued construction activity. And here's what it is now. It's state land, and I guess it's leased to the military. The National Guard out of Florence control it, and military contractors go in there. And that was use it. That was confirmed by the local channel, CBS channel, that ran the story that very first night, and then pretty much that was kind of it. They
ditched it. You can't find it anywhere except on our website now.
Exactly. So the video's gone. I have a copy of their report that's not very good, and then the story itself is just gone. You can still Google it, and you'll get the links, but when you click on the links, there's nothing there.
Now the link that's on the Unknown Country Out There page is still good, and subscribers, that link will also be available in your edition of Dreamland, so you can conveniently make use of it. And we're going to download the video from YouTube and put it in our archive right now. So in case this show airing causes the video to be pulled.
There's an enhanced version that a YouTube user made for me. that's pretty cool. He put it through a filter, and he slowed it down, and, he repeats it and slows it down. So it plays normal speed, normal coloring, and then he plays it in the purple or blue filter, and you can really, really see the interaction.
Okay, we'll make sure, subscribers, that video is available as well.
Excellent, excellent. And I also have a video I took the following day, it might have been a couple of days later when I went back to video it, of the burn area. If you're interested, you can feel free to snake that too.
Yes. Okay, Alex, I would like you to thank you for being with us, and please write me at Whitley@Strieber.com anytime you have any updates, because this is fascinating stuff, and it sounds like we'd love to hear about your crypto work anytime you're ready to talk about it.
Excellent, excellent. I will do. And there is a little bit more information. I didn't want to mention it without talking to you behind the scenes first. And as soon as we're done, I'll email you, let you know what that is. I'm not sure how it's connected, but it's pretty unique, and it's a major name, and I wouldn't want to say it without your permission, so I'll email you, tell you what I'm talking about. You might already know.
Okay, and folks, you can be sure we'll start working on this immediately, and if we can reveal that information, we certainly will do so. One thing you can be certain of and count on with Dreamland and Unknown Country is we don't hold anything back unless it is helpful in order to make something else equally or more important known. So we're very careful about that, and we will be following up with this story. Alex, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Whitley. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Dreamland. Be sure to tune in again next week. Dreamland is brought to you by UnknownCountry.com and our family of subscribers. Our news editor is Ann Strieber. Our science reporter is Linda Bolton Howe. Our webmaster is Daniel Stiegel. And I'm your Dreamland announcer, Brian Arnold. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.